A few days later, plunging further into the depths of winter. During this time that the rest of the world called exam period, we were sitting watching TV. The same as ever. This is boring.
そうね。
The exchange that could not even be called a conversation. We spent all our days in this fashion, killing time without meaning or purpose. Speaking of which, when is it for you?
今日よ。
I see. So it's today. That word, that today, was a temporary discharge that she alluded to earlier.
もう会えないかもね。
Yeah, I guess that's true. Because even if she were to be readmitted to 7th floor, that would be her last time. And in that time, I'd probably be discharged and readmitted myself. It didn't seem likely that things could be timed so that we could see each other again.
あなた、決まった？
About where I'm going to die? No, not yet.
そう。
She nodded somewhat sadly, the expression of someone being discharged for the second time. I still felt nothing about the situation, and hadn't heard from the doctors about my first discharge. Come to think of it, I wondered if she'd finally decided what her own answer to the dilemma would be.
説明支度できたわよ。
A lady came up to us with these words. Those are probably her mother. She nodded slightly at me. I did not rise.
じゃあ、そろそろ行くけど、用意はいい？うん。それでは、失礼します。
She nodded slightly at me again, and then turned to leave this place. She did stretch out her hand towards that girl who was likely her daughter. But the girl did not move at all. She stayed rooted in her chair even after her mother had grabbed her hand.
どうかしたの、説明？少し苦しい。え？苦しいってどこが？胸？お腹？胸。ちょっと待ってなさい。すぐに先生呼んでくるから。
She took off in visitor-used slippers in a sprint towards the nurse's station. There were but two things left in this place, her and me, both in chairs. I did not know a thing about her disease or its status. The only things I knew were courtesy of her white ID bracelet. Her name was Satsumi and her blood type was O. But we were inhabitants of the 7th floor and she was older than me, if just by a little. Hey, do you want me to lie down over there until the doctors come? I pointed at the corner of the lounge at the couch, as something that I had never seen used. It'll support your back, after all.
別に。もう平気よ。
Saying those words and nothing more, she stood up quickly. Hey, wait. Don't do anything foolish. But she was already halfway down the corridor before I could finish the sentence. Nightfall, after lights out. Bored of reading manga as usual, I wandered through the darkened hospital. The usual lounge, now pitch dark from the absence of light. That is where I found her. Hey, so you're still here. What's up? Not feeling well again?
別に。
Was all she said as she stared at the window. So her discharge had been postponed after all. No one knew when the next chance would come, but it would probably be weeks from now, not days. Hey, could it be that you feigned illness today? No, that probably wasn't the right way to put it. See, you couldn't say that we weren't sick all the time. What I'm saying is, you didn't want to leave the hospital, did you?
意味がわからないわよ。
Because there's no afterwards for you now. But there was no answer to my question in her silence. She had asked me so many times before about where I wanted to die. It had always been that I didn't know yet, and she didn't want to die at home or here on the 7th floor. So you have no other place to go after all?
だったらどうなのよ。
No, nothing. This familiar lounge, flooded in darkness. Her familiar stance, looking out the window without so much as acknowledging my existence. This place we called a hospital, and these extinguishing lights in spite of the fact that it was only 11 p.m. or so. This was the tangent point between what was normal and what was not. On top of that, we were inhabitants of the 7th floor, bereft of any choice save one, death on the 7th floor or death at home. The outside world that she was staring at from the pitch-black height of 7th floor, the normal world. The buildings and homes were still radiant with light, and the street overflowed with people going home. And although my awareness of it was still vague, I was already an inhabitant of the 7th floor, already an abnormal existence. There was no longer any way for me to go back to the other world, was there now? My time is at a standstill. I spent so many seasons, so many white overcast skies, without the want or need to converse with anybody. At first, I would look down at the healthy kids going to school and the people walking back and forth on the streets. And when I got tired of that, I always watched TV. Nothing else to do, nothing else I could do. Even when there was snow outside the window, it was always bright and sunny inside the TV screen. A dream world, stretching out before my eyes without heat, without cold, without pain. I sought comfort from my imagination. And so I amassed a huge knowledge base. Meaningless trivia upon meaningless trivia, over and over. Before I knew it, nothing that appeared on TV seemed real anymore. In a quick succession, it also happened to books, games, and then my family. Finally, I was unable to view myself as anything real, as if I was staring at scenes of another person's life. That's why I was not surprised even when they transferred me to the 7th floor. If I but closed my eyes, the world would always vanish. So I thought I'd be fine, and I did as I thought. And soon enough, my second discharge from the hospital. By the time of my next admission, I'd probably be too weak to stand by myself. I found my own self, the one who couldn't do anything even though she knew this, to be pitiful. I found my own self, the one who had no destination, to be ridiculous.
時間を止め、心を止め、胸に大きな傷跡を作り、それでも22年も生きてきたのに哀れだと思った。
January 19th, 2005, 7th floor. A few days after that, the overhanging clouds had cleared up, and an endless winter sky was in their place. Oddly enough, my father had come to visit, a difficult expression on his face the entire time. But he was saying something or another about my insurance, and at that time his eyes were not unhappy at all. I have to the doctors for a bit. Saying this, my father strode down the corridor, toward that dim conference room where this had all begun, or so it seemed. My hospital room was now empty. Having nothing to do, I reached for the weekly magazines that they'd brought at the stands for me. And accompanying them, just as ever, there were fruits and drinks as goodwill gifts. And to one side of the basket that the fruits were piled in, right in front of one of the melons that I so hated. What I saw was a set of car keys. The keys shone silver. These were the keys to my father's pride and joy, the coupe that he sweated over from the upholstery onwards. The coupe that I'd asked to borrow a long time ago, and I'd been told no without a single second's delay. And my still unused driver's license in the breast pocket of my pajamas. Even after I had lost a chance for that use that day, it remained with me waiting, as if it was a proof of life. In silence, I grabbed the keys. It happened as if on impulse. I had no idea what the motives were, or my motives were either. I just seized them without a second thought, as if I was looking at a scene on a TV. And then a few days' worth of meds that had been dispersed, I stuffed those into a bag and I headed down the corridor. I snuck past the nurse's station and quickly strode towards the elevators. A bag in my right hand and the keys in my left, the long-neglected driver's license in my breast pocket. In front of the lounge, and the next thing I saw was the girl sitting there watching TV as per usual, staring blankly and boredly at that screen, sitting on a little foldable chair. Hey, that show any good?
そう見える
No, not at all. The all too expected exchange. Her eyes looked as far away as they had always had. Well then, shall we go together? I continued talking as I showed her the keys in my hand. See? I'd have wanted to be at home.
私は7回も嫌
Well then, shall we go together? With that, she stood up from her chair. Her hair swayed with her, and she grazed the tip of my nose. And then, she too, stuffed a few days' worth of meds in a bag. And we made to leave the 7th floor together. I switched off that boring TV. Grating laughter of the MC was forever obliterated. Both of us in our pajamas clad boarded the elevator, headed down from this top floor down to the 1st floor. At the 1st floor, we headed not for the ER entrance, but for the outpatient clinic's entrance. The cold winter air struck away at our faces, all the more strong in a wide open space like the parking lot. The two of us wandered around the spacious field, looking about ourselves with unease. After a little while, we came across my father's car, a silver coupe. My father's pride and joy, impeccably maintained. I immediately inserted the key and opened the door. Go ahead, get in.
分かった
I sank into the driver's seat. She was in the passenger seat, but she was so short that she'd have a hard time seeing the road. I turned the key into the ignition and stepped lightly on the accelerator, just as I learned during training. Reassuring engine noises filtered into the cabin. I released a handbrake and then applied the clutch. Now we could go anywhere. That was our plan. Alright, let's go. She nodded slightly. Instead of replying, I shifted into 2nd gear, and the car accelerated smoothly. Unused to the clutch and swerving slightly, I advanced slowly.
揺れるわね
Yeah, it's my first time in a car. Well, it's the first time since I got my license that I've driven a car.
そう
The exit to the parking lot was now in view, and the largest road beyond it, without traffic lights. I turned onto it. The sound of honking car horns. They were directed at me as I cut into the road. The silver coupe complained, but did not stop as I worked the unfamiliar clutch, the stiff gearbox. I must really have rubbed the other drivers the wrong way, as the honking of horns did not seem likely to cease. But I just continued to drive without caring much. None of it quite seemed real at all. Hey,
何
are you scared?
怖がった方がいい
No, not really. Still before noon, the high-flying sun. The skies of January, above and beyond the windshield. Skies so blue that it seemed almost in mourning. We had no destination. And that cold day without an alien clutch in a swerving car. On that day we drove onto the highway in our pajamas. On that very day of winter. January 19th, 2005. Ibaraki, Ito Highway. Around when that blazing high sun had changed into a dusky orange. We were continuing to drive, just driving in any direction at random, and in a place that I did not recognize. We're stopping for a bit. I finally brought the car to a halt. A roadside somewhere far away from civilization, no traffic anywhere to be seen. Lonely. Having stopped the car in this nameless place, I started inspecting around the cabin. If there was anything useful here. We'd just run off with any preparation at all, but that was something trouble leaping out at me. With that in mind, I first scoured the dashboard. There's nothing here at all. A couple hundred yen clutched around the gear stick, a few manga volumes, and a couple cheap disposable camera. It wasn't as if we had a destination, but the onboard GPS navigation system looked broken. And I only had about 8,000 yen on me. That was all the money I had lying around when I up and left. So combined with the pocket change I'd found, I'd only had 9,000 yen or so. Of course, I hadn't really expected there to be anything in the car anyways. But this lack of money presented a problem. It wouldn't be possible to find lodging on this budget. And it didn't seem like this girl would have any money on her either. No, it's nothing. Whatever, I'd have expected this from the beginning. It wasn't as if I thought through enough to have things like a plan or a schedule. I just wanted to get out, right there and then. I did not want to stay where I was. Underneath the curtain of twilight, I started up the silver coupe again. Hey, are you hungry? I asked her as I drove along. Couldn't think of it, she hadn't eaten anything since morning. Want to stop at a convenience store or something?
Yeah.
Hey, don't be like that, and the food's much better than anything up on the 7th floor. She did not respond to me. Instead, she looked straight down at the pink pajamas she was wearing. Oh yeah, that's right. I looked down at my own clothing. Sure enough, in these pajamas, we'd be conspicuous no matter where we went. Not that we weren't conspicuous right now. In any case, we'd have to do something about them. And having made my decision, I steered back towards civilization. After a little more driving, we arrived in a place whose name I did not know. Probably somewhere close to a rail station. Certainly enough people around for it to be the case. There's got to be one around here somewhere. I looked around anxiously as I drove, my back pitched a little forward and not touching the seat. Ah, there one is. At last, a coin laundromat. It looked pretty run down from the outside, on the first floor of a forlorn building. This was as good a place as any. I stopped the car not far from the entrance to this place. Alright, I'll be back in a second. Leaving her and her confused face in the car, I walked into the laundromat. My nose was filled with the smell of bleach and detergent the moment the automatic doors opened. The exterior of the laundromat told no lie, and the washers and dryers were all old and run down as well. There's nobody here. The empty laundromat swallowed whole my murmured words. Only a single dryer was in operation, making its characteristic humming noises. I immediately walked to that machine and checked its timer. It looked like it would operate for 30 minutes on 200 yen, and only 5 minutes had elapsed so far. Whoever's it was probably gone elsewhere to kill some time. Ruminating over this, I looked around just for a time to assure myself that no one was around. Then, satisfied that I was all alone, I put my hand on the door handle of the drying machine, and I abruptly opened it. The door opened during operation. The dryer spun down to a forced halt. I pulled out a clump of half-dry clothing, ignoring the heat and humidity. And after looking around once more to make sure no one was around, I walked out of the laundromat just like that. She sounded slightly surprised when she saw my arms full of clothes, but I threw the clothes in the back seat without a word. Alright, let's go. I looked back at the bundle of clothes with the steering wheel in one hand. Gaudy-looking sweaters and jeans and almost nothing else, all in pretty big sizes at that. All still wet, but the car's heating would dry them out soon. Change into whatever you like later. She didn't react much to those words either. She just looked back at the pile of clothes. Look, we had no choice. Well, obviously, it wasn't as if I liked doing this kind of thing. And it wasn't as if there was anything I was saving that money for. It was just like given the amount we had, it would be very difficult to buy new clothes. After I'd driven around for a bit, around when the moon shone full above us, I stopped the car next to some public park. Probably a place for children to play, tucked away in the corner of a residential area. And there, I started looking through the clothes I had stolen some time back. They were mostly dry by now, thanks to the heating in the car. All men's clothes after all. I inspected heap once more before a veritable mountain of gaudy jeans and sweaters. Probably someone around my age, around the size I looked like. And sitting in the driver's seat of the car, I changed into a pair of jeans and a sweater. Hey, you should get changed too. They're all too big. Then will you go on wearing pajamas forever? She answered reluctantly, grabbed some jeans and other clothes and opened the door. Hey, where are you going? And just like that, she started walking to the park's bathroom. Hey, that was fast. She'd come back in short order. Pink pajamas she'd been wearing in her hands, a white shirt and pair of jeans on her body. Well, that turned out fairly well. No answer. I expected this, but everything was too big and baggy on her. Jeans were too long and rolled up far up at the cuffs, and the sleeves of the shirt were way much the same. Come now, don't say that. It's a little warmer this way at least. She made an only slightly dissatisfied face at my words. Oh, is that it? Were you hoping for more girlish clothes? The same response as ever. I was sure that she was unhappy with her baggy shirt, but soon she returned to her usual lack of expression. It began to rain all of a sudden. A freezing rain falling from the frigid January sky as it had forgotten how to stop. The countless raindrops spattering on the windshield and obscuring the view from the inside. And when each grew too large for surface tension to hold it up, a few of them gathered, slid down, became rivers. And these rivers swallowed up raindrops underneath them and ran to the bottom. Stared emptily at the rain from the inside. A parking lot somewhere, a desolate place in the middle of the mountains. Having finished shopping at a convenience store, we were spending the night here. The dining menu: 2 rice balls, 500 milliliters of Pocari Sweat, and half a bag of potato chips. It's been a long time since we did anything like this. She murmured with a convenience store rice ball in one hand. It wasn't anything of wonderful quality, but it was far better than anything served up on the 7th floor. And when we were both going after potato chips, she suddenly stopped reaching for it. Something the matter? But her eyes returned past a windshield gazed by the rain. At a few white flowers on the roadside. Some flowers soaked by rain. I didn't know if someone had planted them or if they were wild, but I remembered something about them. Were those Narcissus? Oh right, Narcissus. Well, I didn't know flower names all that well, at least heard of Narcissus before. And this girl who seldom spoke a word was actually talking about something. And so I followed along. And speaking of which, are these not exactly the real deal as well? So they must be pretty rare then. Anywhere? And where exactly? It wasn't as if I had any deep purpose in asking. It was just I was making conversation as best as I could. And yet this girl thought about it for a bit. Slowly opened her mouth. West? Awaji Island? Hey, wait. How far away do you think that is? I just started driving a car, so I wasn't even halfway proficient yet. It was probably about 700 kilometers away, and even on the tolls, I couldn't say how long it would take. And in the first place, I didn't think we had enough money for that. If we went by normal highways instead of tollways, there was no way we'd have enough for gas. Hey, don't say stuff like that. You can't mean to go there, right? What?
問われたから答えただけ。
Just like that, she went back to staring at the flowers across the windshield. The thick haze of the cold rain streaming out of the glass. She kept gazing and gazing and gazing. I didn't particularly want to go there either, but I had nowhere else that I wanted to go. Alrighty guys, well that was chapter 2, The Silver Coupe, for Narcissus, and I'm definitely getting into this. I'm glad that they escaped they left the hospital with the hospice, and they're going about and start making small beginnings to not be forced to live in the world where they're going to be forced to die. And hopefully good things come in the next chapter. But until then guys, thanks for watching.